Welcome everybody to another edition of the Michael Costa Show. Today is a continuation of yesterday's episode, exposing the media bias. But I'm going to concentrate today on police-involved shootings. So I want to start off right away with exposing the media. With this article, I found an Accuracy in Media, which is a website that keeps the broadcast media accountable and trying to expose their media bias, double standards, etc. So let's jump right into it. All right. So, broadcast media hit for deceptive editing on Columbus shooting. Columbus shooting is, to put you guys in context, is the shooting of the young teenager that was about to kill somebody with a knife, and the cop got there in a split second, had to make a decision, and ends up shooting the girl holding the knife. All right. So broadcast media hit for deceptive editing on Columbus shooting. Just a few days removed from the verdict in the George Floyd case, NBC is being ripped for its deceptive editing in the death of Ma'Khia Bryant by police in Columbus, Ohio. Bryant was shot and killed by police around the time the verdict of the Floyd case was being announced. In their report on the officer-involved shooting in Columbus, Ohio, NBC Nightly News deceptively edited the 911 call to leave out the part where the caller says a girl was trying to stab us. They also don't show viewers the knife in the attacker's hand just before the shots. So, right, they want to frame the story as the 911 call. Nobody on that call was saying there's somebody trying to stab us. And when they show the video in question of the police shooting, they edit out the part, or they try to hide the part where she's holding a big steak knife, right? So NBC inflamed its reporting by the case by editing out references to these grown girls over here trying to fight us, trying to stab us on the 911 call police heard on the way to the call. It also edited out showing the knife in the girl's hand on the police body cam of the subsequent shooting that Columbus police later released. The NBC News video contrasts with ABC and CBS videos shared by Nicholas Fondarico on Twitter, both of which highlighted the call and the knife in the girl's hand. So see, when I'm talking about exposing media bias, it's not specific, or it's not generalized to all media in a certain situation, right? So the media are diverse in their, if you will, in their double standards, or trying to mislead or trying to frame a story. In this case, it was NBC, and ABC and CBS showed the right videos with the right context. But it could be another story where NBC gets it right and ABC or CBS gets it wrong. So this is not to point the finger at one media specifically, but at traditional mainstream network cable news media in general, right? So NBC, Fondaraco notes, merely showed the knife on the ground, not in the girl's hand, leaving some doubt in viewers' minds of what happened. Last week, Chicago was rocked by protests over the shooting death of Adam Toledo, 13, by police, which I will show you how they framed that story also. Body camera video showed Toledo with a gun in his hand moments before he turned around, threw his hands in the air without the gun, and was shot. A photo of the gun lying by the fence has been used by both protesters and supporters of police to buttress their positions. In the Columbus case, however, the video evidence is clear that the girl had a knife. But CBS doesn't get off scot-free. The network was accused of deceptive editing in their website version of the story because the photo they used on the site was not of the body cam, but instead a still shot of a confusing video of protests going on in Columbus. right? So on their nightly news, they might have showed or framed the story with this full context, but on Twitter, they completely stayed away from showing the girl with the knife that you can see here. She's literally, this is from the body cam image of the police officer right before she is shot, where you clearly see the knife here circled in orange, and you clearly see she's about to kill this other woman. But it's not just the networks that are at fault. The legacy media at the Washington Post and the New York Times were also called out for tweets that omitted a reference to the knife in the Columbus shooting. New York Times, Washington Post slammed for tweets omitting that Ma'Khia Bryant was armed with a knife. It is irresponsible, especially in these heightened emotional circumstances, for media to omit key details that greatly change people's interpretation of events that led to the shooting death. America's judicial system is big enough to bear the weight of these continuous investigations, but so far it looks like our media system is not big enough. So here showed you what they omitted. The traditional media omitted to show the girl with the knife, or omitted to show you the full context of the 911 call, right? So now I will show you a video, not of the body cam footage from the police officer, but from another bystander that was filming close by. Let me put it here in big so you can see the full context of the intervention. So here, the girl in pink is the one that was threatened to be stabbed, right? So this is the police officer arriving. This is the people fighting. Falls to the floor, gets up, is about to stab that woman. And in a millisecond, the police officer has to make a decision, right? We're talking about mere seconds here, right? Bang, he goes for the gun. Oh, to tell her to drop the knife. She goes about to stab the girl, and the cop has to make a decision. Do I let her kill that other girl, or do I intervene and save that girl's life by shooting the girl with the knife? So this is a mere millisecond situation where the cop has to make a decision whether he saves a life, which they make an oath to protect and serve. And in this case, the cop protected this girl from being killed by that other girl. Right? And what does our friend LeBron James, right away after the incident, which was around the same time that the verdict was given in the George Floyd case, he tweets, "You're next, accountability, hashtag accountability." Basically outing the cop who saved that other girl's life. He quickly deleted the tweet because probably somebody around him told him how stupid this tweet was. So LeBron James's anti-cop rhetoric, basically with this tweet, to his millions of followers, basically put a bounty on this cop's head. See, now what would have happened if the cop would have just let that girl kill that other girl? It wouldn't have made news. It would have been just another black on black crime, right? It would have never made national news. But since that cop now saved that other girl's life, and in this incident, it's a cop shooting a black girl, well, it makes national news. Not only does it make national news, but the national news frame it in a way where this cop is villainized, is being portrayed as a villain instead of as a hero. In this case, what was the cop supposed to do? I guess if these people don't want cops in their neighborhoods and in their communities, then cops should stop answering calls to these communities. I understand it's a bit harsh, but hey, if they don't want them there, give them what they want. Don't answer calls to those communities, to those neighborhoods. It's just a suggestion, because if they don't want you there, why are you going there? Right? So let's get into a bit of the Adam Toledo story, right? So we see in this footage, which is timestamped at 2:38 a.m. and 39 seconds, right? Where you see his firearm in his hand. In this case, the media portrayed or framed this story as him not being armed and having his hands up, right? So like you see over here, the timestamp, 2:38 a.m. and 39 seconds, right? So at 2:38, 39 seconds, the firearm in his hand. 2:38 and 40 seconds, 1 second later, which is not even a full second probably, starts putting his hands up. So this happened in, again, milliseconds. .838 milliseconds between gun shown in hand and single shot. Not even a full second. Between the time the cop tells him to put away his gun and put his hands up, well, he tells him to put his hands up, then notices he has a gun, tells him to throw the gun, and in not even a full second, where the kid, 13-year-old, out at 2:30 a.m., it's not a reason to die, okay? This kid should not be dead. But my point here is the framing of the news stations, of the news networks, framing this as a poor kid that was unarmed, putting his hands up, getting shot. Where 838 milliseconds, not even a full second, between the time of him being shown with a gun, the cop telling him to put his hands up, and him being shot. You see it plainly, right? You see it plainly here. The time lapse with the timestamps from the first to 838 milliseconds later, right? But yet, the news stations framed it as him being unarmed and having put his hands up. So, let's get back a bit to where sometimes I like to criticize the media. But in me criticizing the media, I got to point out when they got it right? Because it's really rare that they get it right. Well, in this case, on CNN, Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon talk about the shooting in Columbus, Ohio, of Ma'Khia Bryant, about to kill that other girl with a knife.
You were really, to be honest, let's let the audience into something. So Don and I heard about this story last night on social media while we were doing coverage for you of the Chauvin verdict last night. And the initial reports didn't seem right. And it was so interesting for me, as emotional and personal as these stories are to someone of color, especially Don, you with your background, you were cautious about it. You were saying, I want to see this one. I want to see this. because there was a lot of emotion, and understandably so. You got a 16-year-old kid that's gone.
Yeah.
And it's a hard one. I do not know how to explain this to people in a way that doesn't make somebody very angry.
Well, yes, and we're dealing with a lot of emotion right now, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And I think that is, it's real, and you have to take that part has to be.
First of all, when you're reporting news, emotions and emotional statements and emotional feelings should stay aside, because you're just supposed to be reporting on news. I know in this case they're hosts, so it's commentary, but still.
Taken into account. There's a lot of anguish. People are very emotional right now, but we've got to be fair about what happens when police arrive at scenes. It is tragic that it's a 16-year-old girl, just as it is tragic that it's a 13-year-old in Chicago. When police are chasing people, they don't know how old they are. And they don't run and say, hey, how old are you? Oh, I'm 13. You know, my mom let me, you don't know that. Or I'm 16. When they roll up on a scene, they see people tussling around, someone has a knife, and their job is to protect and serve every life on that scene. And if they see someone who is in the process of taking a life, what is that decision? What decision do they have to make? And I know that people say, well, you know, you can do this, you can do that. Tasers don't work the way guns work.
Not at that distance.
Not at that distance.
And not with that amount of time.
Yeah, right. Tasers, then they don't always connect. So you've got to get, you know, 2 prongs or what have you, and it's got to connect.
So I got to give credit where credit is due here, where Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo actually get it right about this Ma'Khia Bryant incident. Basically saying that, what do you want the cop to do? Arrives at a scene where a 911 call was called in, saying that there's somebody here trying to stab us, gets to the scene, sees a woman with a knife trying to be held back by other people, gets free, goes for his gun, about to tell her to drop, tells her to drop the knife. She gets free and is about to stab that other girl. He has a split-second decision to make. He makes it, saves that girl's life, and basically is being called out for saving that girl's life. So, like, what do you want them to do? No? Let's hear that girl's testimony, the girl that the cop saved her life, the girl in pink in the said video.
Shoot a girl and she ain't come at you with no knife. She fucking came at me with a knife.
She came out at you with a knife earlier?
No, she just, that's what the police did.
That lady on the floor?
She came after me.
With a knife?
Yeah, so he got her. Shoot a girl.
So here you have that girl saying, she came after me with a knife. But we don't know the circumstances. I'm sure there's going to be an investigation where the girl's clearly telling that other police officer, she came at me with a knife. That's why he did it, the police officer. Like in this other case, right, where woman is executed by ex-girlfriend on New York street. Right? So let's say there's a cop around this incident. And the cop sees this girl about to literally shoot this other girl. And it's a bit graphic, so I'll warn you. Execution style. So now let's say there was a cop around that incident and that sees this. What is he supposed to do? Not shoot that girl to protect the other one? Or just let them kill each other, right? Let her kill her. if that's what they want. Now, in this case, the cop wasn't there, but in this case, he wasn't there to protect her. But what if he would have been there to protect her? Would he have also been portrayed as a villain for saving that other woman's life? It bears the question. It does, because apparently that's what guys like LeBron James want. Now I want to show you another picture of a tweet somebody put out with a Twitter handle called Defund and Abolish Police, where she says teenagers have been fighting fights, including fights involving knives, for eons. We do not need police to address these situations by showing up to the scene and using a weapon against one of the teenagers. Y'all need help. I mean that sincerely. So basically what she's saying is she doesn't want the police showing up and protecting people during knife incidents or fights. Just let them kill each other is what she wants. So maybe it's about that time that cops give them what they want. Don't show up to these incidents. That's the only way I see where you could give them what they want, and then the cops won't be portrayed as villains for doing their jobs. But I want to finish this video on a good note. From the Washington Examiner, George Floyd got justice in court. Now let's make progress with the law, not problems in the streets. By Tiana Lowe, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. Because now she has actual solutions to these problems, not just going out to the streets and looting and breaking small businesses or businesses in their own communities, right? Nearly a year after dying beneath cop Derek Chauvin's knee, crushing his neck for nearly 9 minutes, George Floyd has gotten justice. A prime prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt that no, Floyd did not die because of his drug use, and that yes, Chauvin did not use the practices endorsed by the law enforcement who make the country a safer place every day. As a result, a jury of his peers deemed Chauvin guilty of all charges against him: second-degree manslaughter, third-degree murder, and most seriously, second-degree murder. Now, some people might question the third-degree murder and the second-degree murder conviction. I don't. Because, honestly, what that cop did, he didn't have to do what he did. It wasn't a split-second decision like in these other two cases. He literally had the time to subdue the suspect and not leave his knee on his neck or shoulder blade, whatever, for those 9 minutes. The manslaughter, the second-degree manslaughter, definitely fits the picture here. I agree with the third-degree murder and second-degree murder conviction. Some people might not. There's place for argument or debate there, but I agree with it. So I'll continue. Now that Floyd got justice in the courtroom, his allies out to push for progress in our lawmaking, not rioting in the streets. Those of us wishing that another Chauvin never murders again should consider his conviction a second chance to take advantage of the opportunity that was squandered last year by the violent rioters hijacking legitimately peaceful protests. After Floyd's death last May, within 2 weeks, support for the Black Lives Matter movement increased by as much as it had in the previous 21 months. And nearly 7 in 10 people in the United States believe that the killing of Floyd was a sign of broader problems in the treatment of black Americans by police, including almost half of all Republicans. But instead of turning pain into power, it was turned into problems in the streets. While South Carolina's Tim Scott saw his police reform bill languished in the Senate, crime exploded over the summer, resulting in the murder rate surging to levels not seen since the 1990s. Hardest hit were the lives and businesses of people of color. So you see how these rioters and protests are counterproductive to the cause they say they are defending. The death of people of color. It's literally in their name. Black lives matter, right? Or do they only matter when they are shot by white people or by cops? A sane society would admit trading a legislative opportunity for months of rioting was a moral and financial failure. But let's at least be an opportunistic society by capitalizing on Floyd's win. Chauvin was obviously a bad apple who managed to accrue 18 complaints on his record with little punishment. Floyd, who was obviously distressed and intoxicated, was accused of using a counterfeit bill, not of any violent crime, and any reasonable person would see that once he was prostrate on the ground, handcuffs rendered him utterly harmless. Yet, cops feel empowered to use this disproportionate force because of the protection of qualified immunity. So let's reform qualified immunity. Let's decriminalize victimless behaviors that are best treated by medical and mental health professionals, and let the police focus on actual violent crimes. I agree 100% with this statement. With bipartisan bills such as that of Scott and Democrat Cory Booker of New Jersey in the Senate, clearly progress can be made. Floyd finally got justice. The next step is with pen and paper, not the sort of violence from last summer that should have never occurred. So let's move past, after the George Floyd conviction, or the Derek Chauvin conviction in the George Floyd trial, let's try to arrive at solutions to these problems. And I think that police immunity for past bad behavior should be thrown in the garbage, and there's a way to reform violentless or victimless crimes, how to answer these calls of victimless and violentless crimes in a way where it won't end tragically like George Floyd's life ended tragically and needlessly. It's time for solutions, not time for making it harder for people of color that own businesses in these places where they are vandalized, burnt down, broken into, stolen in the name of justice. Let's move towards solutions, because I think we can all agree that the best way to fight these injustices is for reform, police reform. But responsible police reform. Not this abolish the police, defund the police bullshit. So now you see in today's episode, you saw how the media will frame things to incite violence, to further divide the population. Some people just don't have time to look into these situations and really see all sides to the story. They'll just see the headline and go and run with that headline. We saw you how they framed it in the Adam Toledo case in Chicago, where, by the way, children are shot every weekend in Chicago and killed by drive-by shootings and gang-related violence. Doesn't make national news. Barely is mentioned in local news. But they will try to frame a story of a 13-year-old kid out at 2:30 in the morning with a gun being shot by police, and they frame it and mislead you to think he was unarmed and had put his hands up. Well, I saw you in less than a second. He had a gun and he was shot. 838 milliseconds. between him having a gun and being shot. Or in this other case of Ma'Khia Bryant, where the traditional media frame it as if she didn't have a knife and she's the one who called the cops. Or editing the 911 call to not make it seem like someone is saying someone is trying to stab us. And you saw LeBron James putting a bounty on that cop's head, quickly deleting the tweet, because probably somebody told him how stupid it was, but he still did it. And millions of his followers still saw it. So guys, let's move towards solutions. And leave the emotional debate aside. Try to proactively find solutions to these problems. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Michael Costa Show. Hope to see you soon. Peace out.